next week. So it's Sunday, October 5th, same time, noon to 4, at the mall, which is a great place to go and have fun anyway, because in addition to all of our expo, there are all kinds of things to do at the mall, and there's going to be the Fairfax County Volunteer Fair, where they invite all kinds of people to learn about volunteer opportunities throughout the metropolitan area. So if you want to come back, you can be there next week, and you please tell your friends, if you have friends in Northern Virginia, let them know about what this event was like and that they can go there next week in Springfield Town Center. If you haven't yet picked up a copy of the Beacon newspaper, the October issue was hot off the press. It was just printed a couple of days ago. So make sure you pick one of those up at the registration table at the front. If you already registered and you filled out a door prize form, be sure to check the chart at the table, because we have the names of all the winners so far on that. And before you go, if you see your name, you can get your gift card at the registration desk. I also want to invite people who like to read the Beacon but who don't always get a chance to pick it up wherever they shop or live to look online. We have a very nice website, The Beacon Newspapers, with an S at the end, .com. That's because we have a Baltimore Beacon, a Howard County Beacon, and a DC Beacon. So all three of our beacons, along with our resource guides, along with our archives of past stories for many years past, they're all online. You can search them by topic, you can search them by name. It's a very useful resource, and we hope that you'll take advantage of that if you like to use the web. This 50 Plus Expo is presented annually by the Beacon newspapers as a community service. I want to thank our sponsors whose support makes this free event possible. Our gold sponsor today is Giant Pharmacy, who you may have seen is providing the health screenings and the shots, the vaccines downstairs. Our silver sponsors include Adventist Healthcare, Pepco, and Johns Hopkins Health Plans. Our bronze sponsors are Maryland Relay, Xfinity, the Housing Initiative Partnership, Cogier Senior Living Potomac, Autumn Lake Healthcare, Trinity Health Pace, and Montgomery County's Recreation Department and Aging and Disability Services. I also especially want to thank Montgomery County's Commission on Aging, which is a volunteer group of residents like yourselves, live in Montgomery County, who apply for and become part of the Commission on Aging, where they meet monthly and they help plan programs and ideas and topics of interest to older adults and work closely with the county government. And it's a wonderful organization. And furthermore, we owe them a great debt of gratitude because they provided the cupcakes today. So Montgomery County Commission on Aging, in honor of the 10th anniversary of Age-Friendly Montgomery County, is providing that treat. Now, what is Age-Friendly Montgomery County? You may not be aware of this, but the World Health Organization established, I think maybe 15 years ago, something called Age-Friendly, which is an international effort to make governments and businesses throughout the world aware of aging issues, older adults, how their needs are changing, how government and society needs to be adjusting to that and to help out when necessary. It's a very important initiative. It's been catching on worldwide. I think there's 1,700 jurisdictions around the world that are part of it, and Montgomery County is one of those 1,700, and they've been doing this for 10 years and doing great things. If you want to know more about what they're doing, you can look at the county's website, and while you're there, I invite you to complete an online survey letting county leaders know how you feel about the age-friendliness of the county. Is it meeting your needs? Is it doing what you want? So I've been told that the survey should be posted fairly soon on that website, and that would be montgomerycountymd.gov/senior. Have I taken up enough time as the county executive here? Not yet. Okay. All right, we have a few more minutes to fill. So let me ask you that. He's going to ask you questions and answers, what the county is doing for you and not doing for you. What do you need? I'm going to ask you about the Beacon, okay? What does the Beacon need to be doing that you are having us do, that you're not seeing, that you would like to see us do to make your lives better? Anybody have any suggestions? How could the Beacon be better? Or how could our events be better? How could we do things better for you? I planted him for this, yeah.
I really love when they do things on health, sleep, different health things. I really enjoy that a lot.
Okay, health issues are most important. Okay, that is our biggest section of the paper every month. So we'll keep that. Yes, you have a thought? Housing? Yes. Right, affordable housing is an issue for a lot of people in the county, yes, and seniors in addition. So there are some services that the county offers. Look on the website and see they do have a section on housing issues and on affordability. There's a group here that's exhibiting downstairs called HIP, the Housing Initiative Partnership, and what they do is they match up older adults with big homes that are too big for them to they don't really fill it up, they need to do something, and they need money, with people who are looking for affordable housing. And they say, okay, we'll rent our bedroom to you or our downstairs to you or whatever. And they match them together. It's a wonderful service. It's free of charge. And it might be an answer to your problems. So I recommend that you call or reach out to HIP, H-I-P, Housing Initiative Partnership. There are advertisers in the Beacon. You'll see them in our housing section in the October issue. And that might be a good solution for you. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, okay. Yeah. There's another gentleman who has a question. Do you mind if I take his question? You want to earn some money, you mean? Yeah. Ah. Wow. So you're looking for work, okay. And you speak French, right? You say you speak French? I recommend that you reach out to some of the groups that are French related, the French Embassy or the various French Alliance Française, whatever they are, and see if you can be of assistance to them. I know, yeah. Right. Right. I hear you. Yeah. Okay, well, we can talk later some more. Sir, did you have a question?
Well, compliments on this event. I've been attending it for a number of years now. But this year seems to be a light turnout. You haven't filled up the place like you have in the past.
Yes, yes.
Sign of the times.
It's a sign of the times, indeed. Yes, yes. It's a sign of the times. Businesses are watching their P's and Q's and their dollars, and they're being very careful where they spend them. And so we've have a smaller number of exhibitors this year than usual. That's quite true. Hopefully that will turn around, but I can't get, no one knows the future. We live in uncertain times. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Yes. You're saying you need home care services that you can afford? Is that what you're saying? It's hard to hear from here. The county does, I believe, have a home care service. It's limited, but people who meet the certain qualifications can get a certain amount of help every month, I believe. And I would check with the people at the table right outside the door, or ask the county executive when he's here. He's here? Okay. He's on. Oh, okay. I have taken up enough of your time. Dr. Bridgers is going to be introducing the county executive. Let me just welcome Dr. James Bridgers, the director of the Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services. Some of you may remember him from a couple of years ago where he spoke in this very room at another one of our expos. Dr. Bridgers, thank you for joining us. Please introduce the county executive.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. The county executive will be here momentarily, but there are a couple of slides I'd like to go through prior to his start. But even before I begin that, let me make some acknowledgments here. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Stuart Rosenthal for all the work that he does with our super senior population. So let's give him a round of applause. And the Beacon magazine, we have our exceptional director, chief of our Aging and Disability Services, Dr. Patrice McGee, and her team. She really helps inform some of the information that's captured in the Beacon. I hear you talk about supportive housing or housing assistance or even health. Our team at the Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services works very diligently to make Montgomery County age-friendly. And so thank you, Dr. McGee, for all that you do. Ms. Jennifer Bryant, our Director of the Office of Management and Budget, she's here to listen to you. These forums and conversations help us advise our programs and the council based on your needs. So it's really important for you to ask questions at these forums, to come to some of the county council sessions. Even if you can't physically be there, try to sign up to do a virtual participation. If you can, Ms. Mary Anderson is here, who is the director of our public information office. Her and her team are here. Let's give her a round of applause. They are instrumental in setting up our staging our forums and having all the comms and all the media. So they play a great part as well. Ms. Adrienne Clutter, who is the acting director of Parks and Recreation, I think she's outside actively working, but she co-chairs the age-friendly Montgomery Committee with me. So we work diligently to listen to all of the things that you may have or may need, either as physical or mental or supportive. So these are just some of the folks who attend these sessions regularly, because we want you to be an active voice. We want you to be an active voice in the community and to provide us with the necessary information so that we can make those decisions to have better programs and better outcomes for you. So the county executive is here. Let me just start. There are two budgets. There's one county. We have an operating budget, everyday services, and you can just see what those operating budget items are, from schools to police to health and other service supportive of those things that you talked about: bus service, trash collection, and libraries and parks. And on the other side, we have the capital budget, which really helps those big projects and buildings. So when we talk about senior service centers and new schools and roads and bridges and, you know, more infrastructure items, those are covered under the capital budget, even parks and pools. Then the operating budget and process timeline, the county executive will go into that. But again, he's here to hear you. Once he goes through his presentation, he will allow you the opportunity to ask questions. We have our team here to support some of those questions, because we are really interested in hearing from you, not only here regarding the county executive's priorities, but what those budget items will be. He's hosted multiple forums over multiple years just for this purpose only. So without further delay, please allow me and welcome our county executive, Mark Elrich.
My water. But that's an amazing microphone. I usually have a terrible time with microphones. Does this, folks, does this advance, or is somebody going to advance this for me?
We'll change it for you.
Okay, good. First of all, thank you all for coming out. These are really important meetings. When I first started this county executive, they used to do the budget forums after the budget was done. And I thought that was a little bit late. And so we did our capital budget forums this summer. Now we're doing the operating budget. Our folks are busy starting to put the operating budget in place for the coming year. And so it's our opportunity to hear from everybody and to kind of give you an idea of where we are and then take questions from you. Ultimately, we try to shape this budget around you. I'll start with this part. The county has two budgets. One's a capital budget and an operating budget. We're here to do operating. Operating is all the things that require people to do. You know, the school operations, police and fire, health services, bus services, trash collection, libraries and parks, anything where the human beings are involved in doing the work, and that's the bulk of the budget. That is operating. Capital is the stuff we build. So it's new school buildings, new libraries, new police stations, new rec centers, roads and bridges. We don't build many new roads and bridges, but we maintain them. Transit centers, the metro, the work we do around metro, we're not directly funding metro, that comes from the state. Government buildings, anything we build or fix, and parks and pools. So all those things fall under the capital budget. So today we're going to focus on the operating budget. The timeline, like you see up here, is the current phase. We're September to November. We're listening to you. By November and January, we start doing OMB, is Office of Management and Budget. You wouldn't know that unless I told you. So OMB is going to start with how much money do we think we have, what's the likelihood of funding levels for different departments. We already have discussions about if revenues don't turn out the way we plan, what might we have to do to cut budget to make it fit? Or what might we have to do to alter the tax rate to make it fit? Then by March 15th, we have to recommend the budget to the council. And we do this, unfortunately, while the school system is still working on their budget. And that's a real challenge for us, because if you don't know what the school system's final numbers are sometimes, it makes it hard to anticipate how they fit, because their budget is part of ours. The $7.2 billion we have, a little over half of it is going to the schools, including Montgomery College, and not knowing exactly where that is can lead to problems with how we try to put the rest of the budget together. A long-term project of ours is try to get their timeline to align with our timeline, so we're dealing with the same numbers at the same time. In April and May, the council holds public hearings, and they review the budget, and it has to be approved by the end of May, and it goes into effect on July 1 of the following year. So I'll talk about some of the enhancements that we did in the FY26 budget. FY26 means fiscal year 2026, which ends on June 30th of 2026. So we're actually in the 2026 budget year now, just so people aren't confused. This is not the future we're talking about, this is the present. So we expanded senior nutrition services at the new Silver Spring Recreation and Aquatic Center. The food programs weren't there, we expanded food programs there. We increased funding to maintain countywide senior nutrition service levels amidst rising food costs. So we adjusted our budget for the costs that the different providers were seeing. And we supported affordable senior housing projects, including the Seabury in Silver Spring and the Sanctuary at Tacoma Park. And we continue to do housing developments that have senior components in some of these developments. So we're trying to provide more housing for people. A lot of folks are either struggle to rent in market rate housing, or a lot of people are in single family homes that they've owned for a long time and they don't want to stay there, but you're also not going to go rent an apartment in downtown Bethesda because you can't afford it. And so how do we provide options for seniors that if they want to leave their house, they have the ability to find a place where they can go. The other thing we try to do, we have supported groups that help seniors maintain their houses, because for a lot of people, the best solution is they want to live in the house and they want to live in their neighborhood. They don't want to move until they absolutely have to move. They're not like, I'm 67 and I'm going to want to move to a new apartment. People want to live in their neighborhood because that's where their friends are, that's where their community is. So just getting up and picking up because you can sell your house doesn't necessarily get you there. And the other problem is new housing, new rental, and new ownership, condos, are so expensive. And I think this is where park and planning misses the boat. They assume you all are going to move into these one-bedroom apartments in Bethesda or two-bedroom apartments in Bethesda. So if you're not going to rent, if you have a house in Montgomery County, one of the older houses, maybe your house is worth $500,000, maybe it's worth a little bit more than that in some of the older communities. That's about half of what a new condo costs in downtown Bethesda. So you're not going to sell your place, take your money, put it back into a new place, and then wind up in debt, which is what they don't understand. You may have a house that's worth that much money, but if it costs you that much or more to get your next house, then now you're in debt, whereas if you stayed where you were, you're not in debt. You may have a little bit more maintenance to pay, but you're not having to go into debt again. So we're trying to balance both ends of this, make it possible for people to stay if they want to stay, but also provide more opportunities to move if they want to move. We have almost $41 million in health and human services for Medicaid, senior nutrition programs, and more. $29.6 million in housing and community affairs, and that includes the affordable housing developments. $10.3 million for transportation, including call and ride, Medicaid transportation, and more. $4.6 million for recreation, including senior centers. $2.1 million in services and other departments. Fire safety, state's attorney's office, he does programs educating seniors on scams and helping make people aware of the scams that are out there and making sure that you know that the state's attorney's office is here to help protect you. And also $1.5 million for community grants. So we give a lot of money out to community groups who provide services to seniors. And one of the things we've done more of is use county money to support community groups to work, because they usually are more directly or more closely connected with communities sometimes than the county government is. And so taking advantage of community groups who want to do this work and are doing it helps us spread our dollars a little bit farther than we otherwise would. This gives you an idea on, my affordable housing priorities. Between FY23 and FY25, we invested $293 million from our development finance budget supporting affordable housing. That's more than we ever spent before. You can see the bar charts there to get an idea where we've gone in terms of funding compared to earlier years. And they've supported the production of more than 4,000 affordable units in the county. And the affordable units are the hardest ones to come by. We only require between 12.5% and 15% from developers. And most of what they provide are 1 and 2 bedroom units. So if you need more than 1 or 2 bedroom, they don't provide much of that. And what they do provide in terms of affordability is a small amount of what we need compared to the needs in this community. And it's affordable to families earning up to 70% of area median income. And if that's 1 or 2 people, you're talking about incomes of around $75,000, $80,000, maybe $85,000. I don't know what the most updated number is, but it gives you an idea where we try to target the housing. Production and preservation units we did in FY23, 975 affordable units in 24, 1,130 affordable units, and in 25, 1,948 affordable units. No one's done affordable units the way we've done affordable units in the county. We continue to make those investments. We're already oversubscribed for money for the next 2 years. We've got enough projects lined up that we have no problem finding projects to build in Montgomery County, and we've been very active in doing that. In Health and Human Services, we've expanded our Montgomery Cares and Care for Kids programs to ensure long-term sustainability. We have a whole clinic system in Montgomery County that serves primarily undocumented people, but anybody without insurance or anybody, and undocumented people aren't the only people who can't afford insurance here. Even the Obamacare, or what do you ever want to call it, it's not affordable to everybody. It doesn't provide services to everybody. So we plug those gaps. We provide support for developmental disabilities and adult medical daycare programs, and we have supported the pay rates, particularly in adult medical daycare, to help make sure those pay rates are sufficient to attract workers. It is a real challenge for the nonprofits to attract the workforce here at nonprofit wages. Unlike the private sector, and unlike the government, what people make working for a nonprofit is a lot less. And I would remind my folks about why it's important to be nice to the nonprofits is you have people who are really committed to helping other people. That's why you go into nonprofit service. You're working for a nonprofit and you're providing services to the disabled, to the elderly, to the homeless. You're working at wage levels that you would not get if you were working in the private sector. You'd make more money in the private sector, but you're doing this because you actually want to help people. You're on a mission. You care about who you serve, and that's an important part of who you are, and it helps the county provide more services more deeply. And if the county had to pay the full cost of all that, we'd actually probably we'd have to fund fewer programs. So we're really grateful that we have so many people who are committed to doing this kind of work in the county. We've expanded support for people at risk or experiencing homelessness up to $39.2 million, and we continue to provide that. It's important to get people off the streets. It is not just the right thing to do, but it also helps make society be more stable. The more people are out on the street and not stable and don't have a place to be, the more likely we are to have problems. And it is hard to treat or help people if they're on the street. Once you get them into housing, you've got the ability to help them. There are a lot of people who are dealing with mental disabilities, and they will probably struggle with housing for the long term, and we have to accept the fact that for those people, we need to provide adequate support so they're not thrown out on the street and left on their own. There are people who are homeless because their car broke down and they couldn't afford a repair bill, and they lost their transportation that got them to work. We actually get stories like that from people, that I was working and then all of a sudden I lost my job because I couldn't get to work anymore because I couldn't afford my car repair. Those people are homeless in the moment, but if you can deal with their car and if you can get them supported housing, they can return to employment, and that's what we try to do. So we both deal with long-term folks who we know are going to need it for long-term, but we also have programs to help people transition through difficult times. And to me, that's a really important thing we do. We have a short-term housing and resolution program. We put $6.9 million into it for up to 12 months of rental assistance. This is actually a big deal because prior to this, and we're still doing some of it because we haven't got enough money out yet, but we're paying to put somebody in a motel or hotel, we're spending over $30,000 a year to do that. The SHARP program, getting people into regular housing, costs us far less than that. So we've tried to refocus away from using hotels and motels and getting people into housing that they can afford better and that we can afford better. And so that's the kind of work we do, and I think it means a lot to people in the community. And I think we still feel like we have more homelessness than we wish was so visible, because you come through downtown Silver Spring sometimes, you see stuff you don't want to see, but we're dealing with it, and we try to deal with it as best our resources allow us to. Next. We put more money into EMS, which is emergency services, and we've now have chase cars and 2 ambulances to meet community demand and improve emergency response. The chase cars, instead of being located in a station, they're flexible to move around the county and be available at different times of the day. Traditionally, all of our emergency services came out of fire stations. So you had a fire station, you had an ambulance, and traditionally, if you needed more ambulances, you built another fire station. And it dawned on me and then some other people that why are we building fire stations? What we really need in some places are ambulances. And so moving to these chase vehicles and saying at this time of the afternoon, we see a surge in calls, say from Bethesda, Chevy Chase, then you have an ambulance that's located close to there. You get more calls out of the East County at 7 o'clock at night, and so you might have an ambulance that's available more over there. So they're designed to be put out where you have high level of calls and trying to take the pressure off us from building more fire stations. And my goal is to expand the number of ambulances that are out there. Over 80% of the calls that are answered by a fire station are medical calls. Don't have anything to do with the fire. So I don't need fire stations everywhere. I don't need to build more stations in order to address the medical needs. I need to build or get more ambulances and have a place to house them, which does not require an entire fire station, and to make it possible to operate more remotely. We've invested in police recruitment and retention. The story of policing in Montgomery County is a difficult one. We're down almost 200 officers now. I think it might be closer to 180. We lost a lot of officers, partly because police work has not been treated very kindly. And despite the fact that Montgomery County is not like a lot of other jurisdictions in how our police are, the stigma of policing affects all police officers. And I'll say sometimes when the public reads a story about something that happens in Missouri, they assume it's happening here. And it reflects on everyone. And it's unfortunate, but a lot of police officers, frankly, feel unwanted and unappreciated. And that's not the kind of way you want to feel when your job is to put your life on the line for the people you're serving. And so we're dealing with that. We had a couple of other problems with police officers. We required college degrees, 60 credits. Most of the jurisdictions around us don't do that. So if you're 21 years old and you want to be a police officer, or 20 years old, and you'll be 21 over the course of a year, you could go anyplace else around here. But if in Montgomery County we tell you you have to go get 60 credits first. So if you don't have the credits when you decide you want to make that decision, then you have to make that decision. You're stuck because you can't come to Montgomery County until you get those credits, which means you'd have to defer at least 2 years of your life to get those 60 credits. 60 credits is a 2-year full-time load for a student. And if you're somebody who still has to support themselves, then you're probably not taking full-time load, and so the time to get 60 credits could easily be 3 or 4 years. When you could walk across to Fairfax and get a job, they're going there. The other thing that's deterred people is marijuana possession. Our laws in this state are flat out backwards. Marijuana is legal in this state, but we have a prohibition on officers who smoke marijuana within the last 3 years that comes out of a bunch of backward sheriffs who sit on this panel that decide what the policy is supposed to be. And again, you could go across to Fairfax County. You could smoke yesterday, and you could be a Fairfax County police officer. You can't smoke once you're on, but you could have done it before. And we need policies to match the real world and what other people are doing, and it's hurting us. And so we think we're going to be able to change the marijuana stuff. On the educational piece, we partnered with the University of Maryland, and this came out of the police department. The University of Maryland looked at the program, the training that our officers get when they become police officers. They're giving them the 60 credits from the university for taking the training, which means when they leave us, they not only will be police officers, they're a police officer, they've got the 60 credits, they don't have to wait. They get a degree that they don't get in the other jurisdictions. So if they go to a jurisdiction that doesn't require you to get a degree, you can get hired, but now you can get hired here and get 60 credits and walk out with a job and a degree, which helps you advance in the police department faster. So this is a good thing, and we think it's going to really make a difference in our recruitment. It gives us an advantage over the people around us. We've got a real-time intelligence center and real-time tactical intelligence that provides officers and command staff with information. So we've modernized a lot of what we do. We have drones. We have drones in 4 parts of the county now. They've been really helpful because drones can arrive on a scene before an officer can. And we've had examples of drones actually getting to a scene, seeing the end of a crime, and being able to follow somebody to see them get on a bus and then tell the police department they're on a bus, this is the bus number, and they go to the next bus stop and take the person off the bus, which is an unexpected surprise. So those kind of things they're really nice stories. I like telling that one. But they help us be more effective at what we do. They really can follow cars. I mean, our next quest is to get a high-speed drones so we can follow some of these lunatics who are driving on the Beltway and on I-270. You know, people are driving 100 miles an hour, and our policy is we do not do high-speed pursuits because people get killed in high-speed pursuits. So if somebody takes off and they go above the speed at which we will chase you, they got a freebie. And 2 years ago, I think it is now, this police sergeant Kep lost 2 of his legs when they tried to stop a driver, put stops, they call them stop sticks, they're spikes that blow the tires and stop the car on 270, and the driver avoided the spikes by running over the officer. The officer lived but lost both his legs. And so we were able to go to the legislature and say, you cannot not make these laws strict enough that we can do something about it. It is crazy, and my next goal is to get a drone that's fast enough that I can follow a high-speed driver, go to where they stop, and all the time tell the police where you are going so the police can tail behind it like 60 miles an hour and arrive there to greet them when they get out of their cars or whatever. We know where they go, we know where the car is. It would help us enforce, and I want to be able to enforce on this. And it is a big public safety thing to be able to do that. And we've enhanced our community safety infrastructure beyond the drones. We have mobile crisis teams, and they're able to respond. We're able to respond to, say, a homeless person in a mental health crisis with a mental health team rather than a police team. And the police should not and do not need to be doing that kind of work. They don't like to do it. It is nasty and unpleasant work. The police are the wrong person that person probably wants to see in a moment of crisis. So if you're dealing with mental health crisis and I can get a social worker or a psychiatrist or a therapist arriving on the scene, more likely to provide help, more likely to be able to talk a person down than confronting them with a police officer. And at the end of the day, people need help, and jail is not a place you go to get help. We have a really good jail. We probably are more committed to rehabilitating people and re-entry than any jail I've ever known of. But even with everything we do, at the end of the day, you're in jail. It is not a good experience for people in mental health crisis. So we need to do something different with that. We're using dashboard video cameras now. We're able to identify stolen cars when somebody's license plate shows up on a camera. It can be read into our system, and we can determine whether that's a hot car or not. And so it's enabling us to pick people up much earlier. We have a lot of emphasis down here in Silver Spring because we get hot cars coming over the DC line. You'll see some stationary cameras here, but stationary cameras and mobile cameras are helping our law enforcement people find people who are breaking the law faster and getting them in their cars. And so this is another thing that we've invested in because it's important for public safety. And we're adding school crossing guards, which doesn't affect any of you, fortunately. We've implemented a zero fare policy, went into effect on June 29th, so the buses no longer have a fare. This may or may not last. It depends on what the federal government does. If the federal government says you cannot get assistance for your transportation budget if you do not collect a fare, then we will probably have to institute some kind of fare because we would lose tens of millions of dollars in transportation money. But they don't say what the fare is, so this fare could be pretty nominal. And there's no reason why the county, if it wants to deal with economic inequities, could not provide passes to people on public assistance or low-income folks, and seniors already ride free and teenagers get to ride free. So we could maintain a large number of people who get absolutely free rides, and we could also provide support for people who don't have the means to afford public transportation and still meet the federal requirements for collecting fares. They haven't dropped that one on us yet, but we know it's possible, so we're hoping that they don't care, but if they care, at least we have a fallback position. And our Flash Bus Rapid Transit Network launched service on US 29. It still needs to be upgraded. We are working on Veers Mill Road. We just got federal money for Veers Mill Road, so we expect to make a connection between Wheaton Plaza and then Rockville Metro Station, and then going up to Montgomery College. The goal, there's about 100 lane miles of bus rapid transit we're going to build. The priority is the 355 corridor from Bethesda up to Clarksburg to connect people from where they live to where they work with dedicated lanes. If you just put buses in mixed traffic, there's nothing rapid about it, and people aren't going to get out of their cars to go slower than they can drive. So you have to offer a service where there's an advantage to be in a bus, and we think we can do that, and that's our long-term goal. Next thing. So, schools, one of my favorite topics. I was a school teacher. So I spent 17 years teaching elementary school, 14 years in fourth grade, and 3 years in fifth grade. And you can see from this chart that back in FY10, we were spending about $16,800 per pupil of county money. Today we're spending $14,600. We're spending less today, adjusted for inflation, than we spent 15 years ago. That's crazy. Anybody who's concerned about the schools and complaining about school performance, you don't have to look any farther than the fact that you reduced funding. What does the reduced funding mean in schools? When I was a teacher, and I taught in one of the highest impacted schools, which is another word for really high poverty school in Montgomery County. And I had an aide almost my entire day. I had about 4 hours of aide time, which means they were there for math, they were there for social studies and English, and they were available to support a kid in small groups. When I left teaching, I was given my choice of what 50 minutes do you want an aide for? And I'm teaching in a high poverty school. Other schools don't have the aides or hardly any aides at all. Aides are really important. When they're properly trained and educated, almost every one of my aides went on to become a teacher because they wanted to become teachers and they were getting the education to do that. They supplement the work that a teacher can do. When the school system says, because of the wide range of skills of somebody in 4th or 5th grade, you have to have 3 different groups. So we're all logical. So in the old days, you teach, 90-minute lesson in math or English to an entire class. When you have kids functioning at the 1st grade level, the 2nd and 3rd grade level, and the 4th and 5th grade level, the school system was like, you have to have 3 groups. So how much time do I have for each group? 30 minutes. And I'm not even teaching the same lesson. I'm teaching a below grade level lesson to one group of kids. Only one group of kids is getting the grade level lesson. And so 2 groups are getting below grade level. This is not a good situation to be in. And we need to fund the school's property. So this is my time in office. And you can see I have not closed the gap entirely, but I've gone from down here to here. And the curve of my line is a lot bigger than any time since many years ago when we were funding the schools better. So we've put more money in. We've made sure the school gets the funding they need. The top line is with state money. And so you can see when you throw state money into the equation, we were spending almost $23,500 back in 2010. Now we're at $22,000, almost $500. So we're still about $2,000 behind. We're trying to make progress on this. I've sent over budgets consistently that fully support the schools. The schools have, I would say, be blunt, they've been pretty mismanaged physically. Last year, they surprised us by telling us they were short 700 teachers, which they were. And it was special education teachers. And so you had a lot of special education students in regular classrooms, which makes it really hard to teach a regular classroom. They were so worried about the budget and getting rejected by councils over time that they only put in as much money as they thought they were going to get, which meant nobody was ever confronted by what do you actually need. And I always tell my people that I may not be able to fund everything you need, but at least tell me what you need. So if I know I'm coming up short, I have a sense of where I have to get to. It doesn't do you any good to pretend like you did everything and then a year later you're asking for a bunch more money. And then people say, why didn't you raise this before? Where did this suddenly come from? These 700 teachers have been building up over the last 10 years. And not talking about it was not helpful. So I've been real blunt with the new superintendent. I want to see real budgets with real numbers. You got to be honest with people, even if we don't do everything. At least let everybody know where we're trying to get to, not just this is what I think you all will tolerate. That's not a good approach to school funding. But it's the most important thing we do. It's one of the things that makes Montgomery County attractive to people coming here to live. It's what's attractive to businesses coming here. So if our school systems get a bad reputation, the worse the reputation, the less likely you are to get people who want to come here. The fewer companies that come here, the more of the tax burden that's on you rather than on commercial properties. So you have a vested interest in a school system that continues to attract businesses to come to Montgomery County, because the more businesses that come here, the more revenue comes from someone other than the residents, and that's important to me. So that's sort of like the outlook of what we're dealing with. I don't think there's anything, I knew that my favorite slides are up here. So this gives you an idea of what happens in our budget. You can see this is MCPS in Montgomery College is 54% of our budget. And then the next little pie, the red pie is the big pie. 808 million is public safety, sheriff's office, police, and fire. The rest of the budget is $587 million. That's transportation, that's parks, that's recreation, that's libraries, that's social services, including HHS. That's a lot of different things crammed into that small part of the budget. And so much of the budget is focused into the schools and then public safety. Debt service is $438 million. That's a necessary evil, because debt service is what you pay for the roads and bridges and schools and everything you build. You don't pay for it with cash, any more than you bought your home. Well, I would assume most of you didn't buy your homes with cash. I don't buy my home with cash. You buy it with long-term debt, and you pay it off over time. And that's what the county does. It issues bonds. It pays for the infrastructure in the county, and it pays it off over a long period of time. And go back again. And when Ike was executive, he took advantage of very, very low interest rates. It was less expensive to pay interest than it was to delay a project and pay inflation. So if you think about it, if you do the projects in the first year, now you've got an interest payment. If I don't do the project in year one, the price of the project in year two goes up by inflation. And ultimately, you're going to issue a bond anyway. When it goes up by inflation, inflation typically back then for construction, it's still true now, exceeds the inflation rate. Exceeds the interest rate. So I can borrow below the inflation of a project. It makes sense to borrow when the rate of borrowing is lower than the inflation on a project. So I never fault him for doing that, but it was a way of us getting out of part of our school problem back then. And we still haven't got all the way out of it, which he was there for 12 years and we weren't able to get completely out of the school problem we have. And we're still working to do that. The other parts of the budget is the pay-go, which is we put a little bit of money, about $29 million into the budget, cash for capital projects to make the bond rating agencies happy. And OPEB and pensions is the one place where I have some heartburn. This county is almost 100% funded on employee pensions. But we previously, I will say, got misled on how we handle employee benefits, particularly health benefits in the future. So right now, out of my operating budget, part of what we pay for is retiree health benefits. So our retirees have health benefits. We pay that cost every year. Somebody got the idea that we should pay almost twice. We should pay for employee health benefits today, and we should put another contribution in so that 15 or 20 years from now, those residents won't pay for it. The interest on this giant pile of money which we're accumulating will have so much interest that money that will be paid for out of the interest, and then we no longer have to go into the operating budget. So in the meantime, you all are paying so that somebody else doesn't pay, and it means we're not building things that we need now because money's being tied up in that. So we got the council to bring the amount we're funding down from 100% to 75%, and we're going to try to bring it down to about 50% so we can use the interest off that fund to pay down some of our current expenses on health care, so I can free up some of that money to do other things we need to do, and I can do all that without increasing taxes. Otherwise, then we look at tax revenues. And last year when the council was desperate because they didn't want to pass the tax increase, they went into the OPEB fund and they raided it. A year earlier they told me I was crazy for wanting to do that, and last year they decided they were crazy too. And I'm hopeful that the realization that it wasn't so crazy gets through to them, because that's one way we can take a little bit of pressure off this. The other thing, go on. So these are our challenges we face. More people need help. Schools cost more. Diminishing budget flexibility. We don't have the flexibility we had before. And with Trump as president, we're going to have a lot less flexibility because he's cutting major services, that money that comes to the county. We have a Head Start program. It is primarily right now serving probably 80% of it undocumented kids. But it's the difference between starting kindergarten at grade level or not starting kindergarten at grade level. If you do not start kindergarten at grade level, you do not catch up. And here's an alarming, because all of you probably raise children. You know the difference between a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, right? Most kids entering the school system are starting the school at the 3-year-old level, not the 5-year-old level. So they're not even prepared to do kindergarten work when they're in kindergarten, which means when they leave kindergarten, they're not prepared to do first grade work. That is a real problem, and kids do not catch up. And this is not just education speak, this is brain development. Any of you ever want to get nerdy, do research on the development of the human brain and how things get fixed in your brain in terms of how your brain is wired between the ages of 0 and 3. And if you do not get the brain set up correctly between 0 and 3, it is harder to set it up later. And Harvard did a study, and when I first got elected to the council, made all my staff read the study. If you spend $1 on a 1-year-old for education, the payback is 8 to 1. If you spend $1 on an 8-year-old for the first time for education benefit, the value is no more than 1 to 1. All the value on investment is in the early years. There's no return by the time you get to be 8 years old. And that says a lot about why we're not able to fix things later on for kids. You can't replace the background knowledge and the information you're supposed to accumulate by the time you're in first grade. You can't just replace it later. Your brain, as it processes information, relies on having that information or some information in the brain earlier. If you don't have it set up right, it doesn't know how to make sense of information, even though other kids in the classroom will take right to it. Middle-class kids who come out of middle-class backgrounds don't have that problem. Other kids who come out of backgrounds where the parents aren't educated, they don't do the kind of things because they can't do the kind of things that we experience, their fates are different. And that becomes an expensive problem when you don't deal with it. You know, my goal is to make sure this next generation of kids starts on a level playing field so they can be successful, so that when their parents, their kids won't need special treatment. Their kids will be able to get the kind of background and foundation from their parents that they weren't able to get from their parents. And it's not about blaming parents. You know, the history of segregation in this country is pretty abominable, and we don't like to talk about it. But the fact is, this county was segregated until 1960 in its schools. And if you were a black person in this county or Jewish until 1967, you could not live or rent in most places in Montgomery County. Almost all the property in Montgomery County had covenants, so people were excluded from schools. The black community that was here after slavery was about 30% of the population in 1870, fell to about 3% of the population by 1960, because if you couldn't buy property and you couldn't rent property and you couldn't get hired for a job, as families grew, you could have maybe one person inherit your farm, the other kids had to leave. And so the population shrunk. In 1967, the county passed a fair housing law. You could no longer enforce the covenants. Everybody had to sell to anybody who was qualified. The banks took a while to catch up, but by 1967, the black population started increasing again. But we contributed greatly, not us individually in this room, but the history of this county set a lot of people up for failure inside this system. And part of what we try to deal with now is how do you unwind the problems that got created early on. But they are real problems, they really affect human beings, and we have to take it seriously, so we're trying to take it seriously. One of the things that I'm pushing for among all these things, you know, Donald Trump passed these amazing tax credits for people who are probably nobody in this room. And he, at the same time he was doing that, he defunded all these federal programs and said, the states have to do this now. So in Western Maryland had one of these catastrophic floods, no FEMA money. States all over the country that have had flooding and other disasters, there's no FEMA money, and the states have to pick up that tab. And so what I'm encouraging the governor to do is, since those people in the state who benefited enormously from those tax cuts, by shifting the things they paid for to the state, then the state should raise the income tax on the highest earners in the state and not go after typical middle-class households in the state. You all should not be paying for other people's tax cuts, and you all should not be suffering because other people got amazing tax cuts. And I will be asking you, how do we fund this if I don't ask you for more money? Last year, I had tax increases in my budget. What nobody wanted to tell you is I had tax credits. So if you had a $500,000 home, you actually would have had a tax cut last year even with my tax increase. And the tax increase was going to be really small for people who had $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 homes. It wouldn't have meant much. It would have meant a lot by the time it got into a $10 million home. And there are $10 million homes in Montgomery County. So that stuff is real. So I'm trying to make the tax graduated. There's a possibility that next year the taxes will go up. I know the governor and other people are thinking about it, up to a cap of 3.7. The good thing for all of you, I'm guessing, is that anybody with less than $400,000 in income would not see a tax increase. And would actually, you would have to have a category that got a tax cut. So we're looking how to rebalance it and hopefully work with the governor to get the rates increased for the high income people so we can provide some relief to lower income people in the county and to moderate income people. Next, federal government, not our friend. We have county employment fell by 9,600 jobs, mostly federal jobs. 56,000 residents are employed by the federal government. Maryland's lost 13,000 jobs, all federal jobs already. We are the highest targeted state. Trump is targeting Maryland even worse than other places. We expect to see the impact of federal job separations October 1st, though apparently they can't pass a bill, but whenever they get their act together, unless the Democrats are able to reverse the cuts to HHS, to education, to a bunch of other programs, if those cuts go through, we stand to lose no less than 10,000 jobs and as many as 40,000 jobs. And if I lose those many jobs, the income, average employee income is over $150,000. All that income comes off the tax rolls. That's a lot of taxes to take a dive. And unless we raise taxes on other people, like those who benefited from this madness, then we're going to pay a really high price for it. So hopefully the legislature does the right thing. We've got $33 billion in federal spending at risk. Their cuts are destroying NIH and destroying FDA. Why you would destroy what globally is considered the premier world research institution in medical sciences, why you would destroy that, I do not understand. But apparently he thinks that's a good idea because rich people just don't have enough money. Possible relocation of federal agencies will hurt us because people will either be faced with staying here and having no job or leaving here, and then we lose their incomes here. And this can be more cost shifted to state and local government. He's threatening to fund no funding for Head Start programs if you have undocumented immigrants in your program. I got this nice letter saying that the county executive, you operate homeless shelters. If you have undocumented people in your homeless shelters, you will be arrested for harboring criminals because any undocumented person is a criminal, which is a bizarre interpretation of what a criminal is. All these people, they're taken away in Maryland and, you know, the ICE raids and everything, almost no criminals taken. Just normal human beings, kids in Montgomery College, just people who are here and working and contributing. And I try to remind him that I'm sure he doesn't pay attention, but all these immigrant folks, if they're working and they don't have Social Security numbers, they have ITIN numbers because employers have to give you an ITIN number. All of them are paying taxes. He says, oh, we're going to stop having Americans pay for these people who don't pay taxes. They actually pay taxes. If he were logical, he would look at this and say, wait a minute, this is my idea of heaven. They pay taxes and they don't get any services because they're not eligible. He should be happy to take taxes from people he doesn't give services to. He is so nasty, so mean, and so evil that he doesn't care what he does. And he would cut off his nose to spite his face, which is kind of what he's doing right now. And the deportation is going to affect our communities. I mean, next time you go out to dinner, look who's in the kitchen, look who's washing dishes and waiting tables, look who's, you know, cleaning, our workers out here, look who's cleaning up Silver Spring or Wheaton and doing all this work. Look at the construction sites. What happens on the construction sites? Look what's happening on farms already. The meatpacking industry. There are places in the Midwest where there are huge immigrant populations that came there to work in meat packing plants because white people wouldn't work in meat packing plants. Their kids would not work there. They're deporting them. You're not going to operate meat packing plants. I mean, good luck getting a steak. So it's irritating that this place is being run by people who have no sense of the future and no sense of civil society. But it makes it hard on us because I can't offset all that. We're limited in what we can do. This shows what's happened with capital spending. And I show this because this is where we were in FY09, 2009. We were spending $300 million on capital projects in the county. Roads, schools, libraries. This is us today. We're spending $280 million on projects. The blue line is what would happen if you kept pace with inflation. You would not be able to spend $280 million to build what you built in 2009. I have tried my entire time to get the council to raise the bond limit in the county. Because when I put together a budget and I put together a $280 million bond budget, those projects are over 6 years. They do not cost the same in year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if you don't adjust this number to match inflation, you're not even building what you thought you were going to be able to build. So projects get kicked out of the queue by the time you adjust it for inflation. We're not able to build the schools we need. We're not able to do the maintenance we need. We're not able to build the transportation we need. And we get our lunch eaten by Virginia because Virginia does not have this stupid system. And we're trying to show the council that if you want to be competitive with people who have more businesses than we do and attract more businesses, then you need to look at how they structure the taxes. They don't lay it on their residents. They lay it on the commercial sector. And then, what's next? This is just a quick look at inflation. Buses, more than twice as expensive over 10 years. New schools, more than twice as expensive per square foot. That's a lot per, yeah, wow is the right word. And fire engines, the only ones that aren't twice as expensive. But still they've gone up $515,000. That's the stuff we deal with. So when I tell you I need money, it's not like I'm inventing things. I actually have to pay for this stuff. And that's what we're faced with. We're faced with rising costs and not enough revenues to keep pace with it. And so what I've been proposing to the council is not new taxes, but tax restructuring. I want to shift the burden off middle class, working class households, put them on another group of people who have better means to pay for it. I also want us to look at what Northern Virginia does in terms of taxes. We're not the same county where we were all funded by residential taxes in the beginning. We also weren't trying to be a business center. In 1960, there were almost no businesses here of any size. This was a sleepy little suburban community made up mostly of workers who fled D.C. when D.C. integrated. That's no sugarcoating on this. My family lived in D.C. from when I was born, 49 to 60. And by 1960, we had moved out, next to last white family in the neighborhood I was in. I went to Whittier Elementary School. Anybody knows D.C.? I lived down the street from Coolidge High School. That was my neighborhood. And came out here, when they came out here, they were greeted in 1960 by real estate agents who said, we're still segregated, so don't worry about moving to Montgomery County because we're safe. And then in 67, we integrate. So that's where we were. Where are we? Let's the next one show. This compares us to everybody else in the region because I can't make this stuff up. It's too nice. This is Montgomery County. This is our tax rate. This is Frederick County. So when people say, if you raise my taxes, I'm going to go to Frederick County, have a nice trip. You can pay 9 cents more than you pay here. Of course, you could always go to, I'm going to jump Fairfax. You could always go to Fairfax County, Howard County, where you pay $1.33. 30 cents more on property taxes than you pay in Montgomery County. And housing prices in Howard County are as high as the housing prices are in Montgomery County. So it's not cheaper to be there. If you go to Prince George's County, you're greeted by $1.37. That's where we are. This is Fairfax County, $1.15. Commercial property is $1.28, 26 cents more than us. But if you're in Tyson's Corner, that number goes to $1.54. So in Fairfax County, they tax commercial property and shift the burden off residents. I have asked the council to adopt this system. It would radically change what you have to pay. And it would get the county the money it needs to build infrastructure without hammering the middle class. I need help on that because the council's not been willing to move. There are powerful people who are vested in the way things are in Montgomery County. Developers do not want to pay. And they know where they sit. They build on both sides of the river. The same companies, the same big developers build in Fairfax County and Tyson's Corner, and they build over here. They know, because I've gotten into arguments with them. And I actually called one of them out because he complained on stage about, you're a high-tax jurisdiction. I said, no, I'm not. And I listed all the taxes in Fairfax County where that guy develops and in Tyson's Corner. And I said, you're 50 cents higher than we are. So when people tell you that people are going to Fairfax County, they're not going there for the tax rate. They're going there because of the services. They built transportation. You go to Tyson's Corner, that place is transformed. You go here, we're as backward as we were 20 years ago and not able to move. We cannot get out of our own way. And D.C. is the poster child. 85 cents for residential taxes. 20 cents, almost 20 less than you pay here. But look what they charge commercial property. $1.89 if your property's worth over $10 million, which is almost every building in D.C. If it's between $5 million and $10 million in assessment, you pay $1.77, and if it's between $2 million and $5 million, you pay $1.66. That's what your competition is doing. And I don't see any lack of cranes in downtown D.C. I don't see people not building down there. I don't see people not building in Fairfax County. We have other problems, and our tax rate on commercial property is not the problem. And they'll go out there, as they did last year, and say, oh, I'm going to raise taxes on residents. If the county had followed what I was trying to do, we wouldn't have hit residents, particularly not residents who don't have the means, with the heavier taxes. Those taxes mostly would have wound up on commercial property. And we've got to figure out a way to do that. Otherwise, we're stuck. And I'm not even on this chart mentioning that Fairfax County has a $200 million they get in taxes on commercial businesses. Montgomery County has no taxes on commercial businesses. They have a licensing tax that yields $200 million. That's a third of that pipe thing I showed you. That was what was left over for everything else in the county government. They got a third of that out of the business community. We get, nice Jewish phrase, upkiss out of the business community. Some of you know that phrase. We don't get much. Anyway, that's my view of the budget. I'm trying to change things. I got one more year left to do this. I am going to run for county council and try to go back there because I did that before. I would like to do that again, but basically for now, ask me questions about the budget. What can I tell you? Yeah.
Wait. We'll walk around with a microphone. If you have a question, just raise your hand. We do ask that you keep your question to about a minute to be fair to everyone in the room so that we can get to everyone who has a question. And we'll also hold the mic.
I want to thank you very strongly for going against the University Boulevard corridor. Yeah. This is a very important thing for us. There's a planning commission that is divorced from the reality of the residents. And very importantly, we are very against any changes that would affect the Kemp Mill Shopping Center. There was a meeting with Councilwoman, that was a packed crowd, several hundred people vehemently against.
Yep.
Are you going to be able to convince the planning board not to go ahead with that?
You have to convince the council, not the planning board, because the planning board's already sent this over to the council. This is one of the worst things I've ever seen. Their approach to this is that we don't care about your neighborhood. We don't care why you moved there or what you like. We've got this, we must do something about housing, but they're not telling you there's no affordable housing in this. They try to put a lipstick on a pig When they started out, they had something called an affordable housing plan. They did a study in East Silver Spring, right behind here. They said if you take a single-family house and turn it into a duplex or triplex, what's it going to sell for or rent for? The answer was the same or more than the existing housing. When they go into these neighborhoods, what they're looking for, and this is not for the big developers, not the big high-rise developers, this is for the townhouse developers in Montgomery County, to turn your neighborhood into the next greenfield. And so they're going to say, we desperately have to do this because we need more housing in Montgomery County. Sounds good. You decent people would say we must do something. What we found out was the jurisdictions that have done this, like Arlington, the reason they went after single-family housing is they looked at their growth projections. They had no place to go. So if they didn't rezone the built environment, they were not going to be able to get more units. They couldn't realize their growth objections. Montgomery County is completely different, and park and planning is lying. This is the only word I can use because that's exactly what it is. They're not telling you that, unlike other jurisdictions, we've planned on a 30-year horizon. So Montgomery County's planned out to 2050. We have more units that are planned to be built by 2050 than the demand is projected to be for 2050. They don't tell you. They're using numbers. I saw Lorient Sales or somebody used the number of there's a need for 40,000 units by 2030, and we're not going to get there. That number was changed. That number was 1919. That number is now 26,000 units, and we're going to get there. They just make this crap up, and it's really disturbing when public servants play loose with the facts and pretend like there's a problem out there. This is about giving away stuff. They still talk about. They still talk about the affordable housing piece, and there is no affordable housing piece. This thing. I'll try. Is it doubled up? 111. Nope, it's not doubled up. So, I encourage everybody to push back and be vocal and work with the other neighborhood associations and hold people accountable, because there is no basis for this number. I'm worried because it's not good for the county. It's not good to destabilize neighborhoods. And there are all these places in the county. This was an equally bad microphone. One. Okay. My teacher voice was soft too. This is so much fun. Okay. That helped. Okay. So there are council members who don't support this. There are council members who support it. You need to figure out who they are, and you need to talk to them. You need to say, you do not need to go into my neighborhood in order to meet the county's housing needs. None of you are against housing. None of you are against affordable housing, which you would like to say. This is all about people who want to stop affordable housing. They talk about single-family zones, and let's say single-family zones are what segregate Montgomery County. I want to give you statistics so you can see how effective single-family zones have been in segregation. In 1970, Montgomery County is 95% white, 4.5% black, 0.5% everybody else. Today, Montgomery County is 16% Asian, 21% black, 22% Hispanic, and 43% white. I don't believe single-family housing kept anybody out of Montgomery County, apparently. All different people live here now. It is not the problem they're pretending it to be. It is a deliberate distortion of what happened here. Also, they can justify turning your neighborhood into the next greenfield. And by the way, single families, you're not going to do this in University Boulevard or Georgia Avenue, which is next, or any of the other. You're not going to do this house by house. You can't build big townhouse developments and blocks of redevelopment based on one person changing their house at a time. Developers are going to come in, they're going to put big money on the table, and they're going to offer to buy out everybody on the block. If they buy out everybody on the block and they do what they're going to do, you're going to get more congestion. Their solution to congestion is to take out any dead ends or anything, go through the dead ends and connect more roads through your neighborhood, which means more traffic, and your neighborhood is not going to be the neighborhood you moved into. And if we were in a desperate place, like in Arlington or like Minneapolis, where there was no place to go, you could have a conversation about what do we do with the built environment. And you'd probably engage the residents in that conversation. But that's not us. We've got enough zoning planned in this county that there's no reason to go through this other than to feed a certain set of developers who like to give contributions to people running for office.
What I don't understand about this affordable housing is it seems to me that they're putting it in certain places, East County. They're not putting it other places. And what really gets me is that 125 townhouse development on Strathmore. Why wasn't EA, the developer, asked to put 20 of them? And why isn't it consistent across the county that developers, and downtown Bethesda is another great example, why aren't they asked to put a certain amount of affordable housing in their projects?
So they're asked to put a certain amount. That amount in Bethesda is 15%. So if you build 100 units, I get 15 affordable. But affordable is not deeply affordable. It's for people around $75,000 to $80,000 incomes. I've got 50,000 households in the county with incomes under $50,000. It doesn't apply to them. Doesn't apply to the people who work in most of the retail and service jobs in Montgomery County. They don't qualify. You're right about identifying here. I will throw Connecticut Avenue is in this too. And those neighborhoods are equally unhappy. But I'll tell you what's not in it, Potomac. I mean, let's be honest about this. If you were so concerned about the misuse of property for single-family homes, there are homes in Potomac you can put entire apartment buildings on their lots. So why not that? It is 16 minutes from Potomac Town Center to downtown Rockville. You can get to Bethesda pretty quickly from there. So they're not interested in the place in the county that has the most land with the fewest houses. They're interested in the neighborhoods where normal people live. And I think people should raise that. Ask the proponents of this, how come, if we're so desperate, the most obvious place to go is off limits? The other place they will go, they'll try to get into the ag reserve, where you actually get economic activity off the land. That's a place they'll go because they don't like it and they'd like to see it up there. But the one place where everybody else lives, that place is off limits. So I'm like, I don't want to go anywhere. Knowing that I've got enough room to build it in the county right now, we don't have to screw with anybody's neighborhood. We could let people be where they be and we'll be fine. But the fact that they're doing this and leaving out people who you would get far bigger bang for the buck going over there than you would in the single-family neighborhood and cause a lot less grief to a lot fewer people. And the fact that they're not doing that, to me, is a problem.
Good evening, County Executive Elrich, Matt Losak, co-founder and executive director of Montgomery County Renters Alliance. And thank you for your championing of renters who represent nearly 40% of Montgomery County and are not likely to buy any of these houses that are being developed by the landlord-developer industry. I'm not sure who's more loved by them, you or me, but either way, I think that bringing it back to the budget, we are in an extraordinary year where we are seeing our homeless shelters at capacity. You talk about the hotel situation, which is a disaster and reflects more and more people who are unable to afford their homes, particularly renters. And from the Renters Alliance perspective, and I know you're aware of this, we are seeing an increasing number of those who are destabilized in their homes from senior communities. Looking at your budget in this difficult time and in an extraordinary year, where do you see it possible to shift some money to HHS to support those people, not who are necessarily going to be chronically destabilized, as you point out with some of the homeless community, but for those who could be helped and salvaged so that they can remain stable in their homes?
So in this moment, we're just waiting to see where the shoes drop when the big, beautiful bill drops this little bomb on everybody. At that point, we'll have a better idea on how many people are going to lose their jobs. It'll be easier for us to project what the effect's going to be on our budget next year. At some point, we may face having to actually shrink what we do. Unless the state decides that they're going to support a graduated income tax so that we can put some of this burden on the people who have the money to pay for it. Because if council members had to go out and ask residents for the kind of tax increase you might need to pay for all this stuff, they're probably not going to do it if it's seen as generalized across the middle class in this county. I don't think there's a will to do that. If the state legislature makes it easier to go after the very, very high incomes, then I think there's much more willingness to do that. And it's fair to say to them, you got what you wanted at the federal level. Your boss shifted it over to the states, so here we are. We're going to do what they did at the federal level. We'll pay for it the way they paid for it at the federal level. So bear with us as we go through this. And like I said, we're not finding new ways to spend money. The only reason we run surpluses, I've been very careful the entire time I've been there not to commit to brand new programs if I wasn't sure what the money was going to be the next year. So we'll see where we get probably in whenever they manage to pass a budget, we'll get a sense of what kind of damage is going to be done and what we have to do.
So, Mr. County, let me just add to that, the county executive to prioritize and look at those areas of vulnerability. Speak to me about all scenarios. Shuts down. There's. I'm gonna use my outside voice to give him an opportunity to prioritize where those areas are needed the most from a fiscal standpoint. So we've been doing this since this administration came into office officially in January. So we've been going through that process. So it's not just for rental stabilization or support to those individuals who need financial assistance. It's for all of the programs across the Department of Health and Human Services. And I wanted to say that contextually so that you know the county executive has asked us already to look at where those vulnerabilities and priorities are, and then to be able to work with him as well as OMB to look at those fundings. I'm good.
Double dipping. You were back in Tacoma Park, where I'm from,
Yes.
before, and thank you for doing the two meetings consecutively. I really appreciate you taking the time. I just said live in Tacoma Park, and it's gentrifying like crazy. I've lived there 40 years now, and there are black people moving out. And it's mostly rich white people moving in, and they're knocking the houses down, small houses like my house, and making it twice and three times as well. And my son has autism, and you know what? He's half black. He's autism. When I die, he's going to end up living on the street because no one's helping him but me. And he's been on the Developmental Disabilities Administration waiting list for 21 years. And I'm so sick of these people. Sometimes I feel like I'm going to do something immoral to them. I'm so angry. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't do anything immoral.
Yes, I also saw you this afternoon, and I really appreciate what you do. It's incredibly difficult what you're doing. I have a little ask that Montgomery County and the state of Maryland have been voting for money for an Israeli weapons manufacturer in Montgomery County. The Maryland sorry, I'm a little nervous. Israel Development Center has brought labs to Pike and Rose. They're selling social media surveillance software, which they want to sell to law enforcement and Homeland Security. So they want to use their suppression tactics on protesters, students, journalists, any of us. Any Israeli affiliation in view of the war in Gaza right now, which is resulting in a horrific genocide, it just breaks my heart that our tax money is being used on a federal level, but at a county and state level, this should stop. Can you?
Yeah, so first of all, this is not your fault, but people have kind of misrepresented that, and I think I tried to say this at the other meeting I was at. The money goes to a recruiting firm. No money goes to a company. And the recruiting firm brings companies here, and some of what they bring here is military. Most of what they've brought here historically is life sciences and other tech, which isn't necessarily military. So it's not strictly military, but none of that $40,000 goes to a military company. And nobody would come here for $40,000, even if all that money went to a military company. We're looking at what we can do because there's a lot of concern at this point about supporting military organizations. But I said at the other meeting, if MIDC wasn't here, they're perfectly free to rent property in Montgomery County or buy property in Montgomery County and operate. We have no policy, and we're not going to set a policy against Israel and then have no policy against any other country that does things that are atrocious or any other manufacturer who manufactures weapons. So I'm not satisfied with the bind them. And if I lived in a perfect world, you'd say we don't have weapons manufacturers. I don't live in a perfect world. I live in this world. And folks are going to come here if they think this is the right place. But other people are looking at what we can do about MIDC. Is there a way to temper what they do, like no weapons manufacturers and things like that, to try to, because nobody wants to stigmatize Israel. I don't want to feed anti-Semitism, which is already kind of out of control. It is worse than any point in my life. And I grew up a place I thought was intensely anti-Semitic, which is here. I moved to Montgomery County. I felt like I was in an alien place because, and I wasn't even Jewish. My mother was Catholic, my father was Jewish, and we didn't practice. And they just assumed that I was Jewish because of my name, and I had to deal with this crap. So I know what it's like to experience that, and I don't want to encourage that. But we've got to figure out a way to address people's concerns about military stuff, and and I get people who are uncomfortable. I wish I lived in a better world where I could give you a perfect answer.
Thank you. You're making it better.
Hello. Thank you so much for your funding for the first Montgomery County Pride Center, a central place to provide services to the most vulnerable of our population, particularly in this political climate. We are hoping that this funding will continue and grow because the needs are just so great to support this population, where our youth are vulnerable without these services to suicide, they just have otherwise the support is non-existent and they are being targeted everywhere.
Look, I wanted to put it in the budget for this year only to take it out next year just so I could get a camera opportunity. So, no, I'm going to keep the funding. It's important. I get why it's important. I'm comfortable funding it.
Hi. Thank you for coming and explaining things to us and giving a chance for the public to speak to you. I take public transportation, and I have since 1985. I don't own a car, so I use it exclusively to get around. And I'm a little bit upset with the current changes in the buses, particularly the 34. I now have to take 4 buses to get to church on Sunday, whereas before I took 2. The 9 became the 34. The 34 went into Friendship Heights, and then I would take the T2 to get to church. Now I have to get on the 9, which I have a mile to walk to get that. Then I have to get off the 9 and wait for the 34 or the M22 to take me into the Bethesda. Then I have to get off in Bethesda and get the D96 into Friendship Heights, and then I have to get the M21 or whatever it is to go down River Road to go to church. It's not great, and if it rains or if it snows, I'm in a lot of trouble. But my doctors are in Friendship Heights. Shopping is in Friendship Heights. I used to go into Friendship Heights and take the L8 to go into Home Depot or Roy Rogers, and that's been cut, so I don't have a direct line to get there. And you want businesses to come into the county, but if you limit the access that the public has to get to those businesses, you're hurting. You're defeating the purpose, really.
I think part of that was created by WMATA's route changes.
No, part of it was WMATA, But I
Yes.
have not gotten an answer as to why all these buses are being filtered into Bethesda. They're all coming into Bethesda.
I'll ask that question.
Yeah, I'd like an answer,
Who's
because
here?
I've asked it.
Who's here from my staff who's taking this down? Anybody? That you getting it down?
No.
I'll try to. Yes, I do have somebody getting it down. So I will ask my folks why they made those changes. That is.
But
I've heard this.
I'd like it changed back, because I'm not the only one that feels that way. And then the number 10 bus, I take that up Randolph Road to go to the shopping center at, near Twinbrook, and that's been cut. The buses go both to Bethesda.
I have multiple complaints about some of the changes in the bus system, so we will have.
You and everybody else.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
2 pedestrians died in the past week. It seems to take forever to get changes to this roadway infrastructure. Is there any way we can speed things up to make our pedestrians and our bike riders safer?
So the state of Maryland is making University Boulevard a priority, and it was already in their list of priorities before this, so that's one of the first places we expect to see their help. That was also a bizarre thing. The Park and Planning says they were doing this rezoning to make University Boulevard safer, and they didn't even bother to find out that the state was working on this. A little side note on Park and Planning. We continue to push, we continue to put money in, we're not going to stop. There's a limit of how safe you can make things if people don't cross in crosswalks, which is sometimes the case, and if drivers refuse to stop for stop signs and insist on speeding.
There's a lot of bus stops that are in the middle of great big long blocks, and people aren't going to walk to where the light is. I think there needs to be a lot more walk beacons in this county.
Yes.
And or something needs to be done with these bus stops. I know they were doing the bus stop infrastructure review.
Yes.
But how long is that going to take, and how many more pedestrians are going to die?
Well, I think the pedestrians are dying regardless of bus stops. I mean, if you look at where it's happening, it's just people visiting businesses and going to and fro, not even with a bus stop, but the bus stops are an issue, particularly if they're mid-block bus stops. I'm a big believer in hawk signals, and so I'm going to continue to push them out. And if the county feels like it needs mid-block crossings, then we probably need mid-block hawk signals.
Hello, you're my champion. I love that I voted for you because I like how you handle the gas leak of all those people getting killed over there on Piney Branch and those apartments. Okay, HOC, okay. They have this new application. It's about 20 pages, and a lot of people are going to be left out because it's so hard to understand what they're asking for. And it's been crazy. I've been trying to get everybody I can, family members, everybody to help me get it filled out because the deadline is tomorrow. And they gave us 30 days, but I've been in and out.
What's the application for?
For us to get our vouchers and everything, yeah.
Do you have a voucher now?
No, I don't have one, but this is what this new application. I don't know if it's because of HUD's new rules or whatever mandates. It's almost like 20 papers. I mean, oh my. And so I would like for you to see if you can have somebody to get that packet and oversee it because a lot of people are going to be left behind.
I will have our folks get that packet.
Don't understand it. Secondly, I was going to Progress Place because that's where I get my mail at Shepherd's Table last week. The county police department, the SUV, was escorting in front of the fire department. There were a lot of Hispanic men there as you turn the corner going to Progress Place. And I was walking to turn the corner. I noticed the police SUV driving slowly. Then I looked and I seen this big black SUV with a camera lens this big. They got my mugshot too, okay? And why is the county police escorting these people around here in this district and everywhere here for the ICE guys? Why is the county police escorting these people?
The county does not cooperate with ICE at all.
It was the county police SUV. Yeah,
How do you know it was the county police SUV?
Because I know what the county police look like.
Well,
God, yeah, I've been here 42 years.
The county does no ICE enforcement at all.
Yeah, I seen it. I'm telling you. They were driving slow while they were behind them in that big black SUV. And I turned to look. I covered my face like this because they got my shot, my face shot, and the Hispanic guys. Yeah, I told Progress Place about it.
I will ask, but I can tell you,
Yeah.
our policy is absolutely no cooperation
Yeah.
with ICE on this.
Yeah.
You will not find Montgomery County
Yeah.
Police backing up
Yeah.
ICE.
Yeah. Okay, sir. I want to let you all know that's what I seen, and
Thank
they got
you.
my face.
I will follow up on it.
Thank you.
So my question is about the size of the MCPS budget, and I appreciate that. I actually was at the MCEA Gala last Saturday.
Me too.
I know you were. And so my question is, I understand your comment about the school district being mismanaged. I'd like to understand a little bit more what you mean by that. And my question is it not a little bit disingenuous for you to say that you don't know what the schools need when MCEA, the teachers union, is always at every meeting that the county has when it comes to the budget and all of those things. So I'd like to understand a little bit more about what you
Sure.
mean when you say the school district is
So-
mismanaged and that you don't know what the needs are.
So last year in the budget, they said they needed 700 teachers. They did not need 700. This is not something new, apparently. They were understaffed for special education for God knows how many years. I've done this will be my 7th budget with them. Be my 8th budget with them. I've done 7 with them. No one ever said we need hundreds of special education teachers. Worse than that, they never put it in a budget for me to say yes or no to. And I don't make line item cuts in the school budget. So they'll come in and they'll say, we need 700 teachers, when we all know that they needed them apparently for years. This is not some new program they instituted. That is them not being honest with people about what they need. And that has bothered me. This is not the first time where they don't lay out what they actually need, and then you think you've met the need, and then next thing you know, it's like, well, now we need this. I can deal with it because I was a teacher and I know what goes on in schools, but for the public to see year after year sudden large increases for things that are obviously accumulations of problems over a period of years does not help explaining to the public why we're funding schools the way they are. And it's been irresponsible of that board to have done it for so long. Now they're coming in with a list of school repairs. They didn't ask. We did not fund their school repair budget last year. Now it's like, oh, by the way, we probably need, I think it's going to be $1 billion life price tag. It is no doubt true. I have been in the schools. Like everything they're going to put on that list is probably right. But the fact that it did not appear in previous requests, it makes it easy for people to fund the budget and think they've got what they did what they thought they needed to do, and then discover, now I got to go back and do this again. It would be much more, to me, it's beneficial to be transparent, even if the school system, even if the county government couldn't have paid for it all at once, to at least know this is where we sit. These are the problems we're dealing with. This is where we have to go, so that we've got targets. We can work with the community to understand why we're spending their money the way they are, as opposed to here it goes again, another huge increase, another need for a tax increase, when people think we did it last year. So, I mean, I try to be transparent. I tell my own departments, tell me what you need. Even if I can't fund the whole thing, I want to know what you need to fix the problem so I can at least plan and know where I have to go. I don't want to sit there and think I've done my job and then discover next year, oh, now you need this. And it's like, why didn't you tell me last year?
And I understand what you're saying, but my point is just that there are other ways that you're hearing what the needs are, like from the teachers' unions and others. And so how do we, is there some way we can help to amplify those voices? Because I'm certain that the teachers are not telling you that they don't need things that they do need. Like you said about aides in their classrooms and how many teachers they need in classrooms.
But that's not what but they haven't pushed for aides in the classroom because they know they're not going to get the aides in the class. This is the frustration. If you make an assumption you're not going to get something and then you don't ask for it, you pretty much guarantee that you're never going to get it. They know, and the unions know, they got butchered when they made these cuts during the recession. That's when that was kind of killed the rest of the aid time to make it very minimal. but that has not been part of anybody's budget going forward. The school system does not come back and say, you know, we need to go back to the point when a teacher can have an aide for at least half the time that they're teaching kids, at least from math and English, not just pick one or the other. They haven't done that. So it's frustrating. And I work with the union. The union doesn't make a budget, so they basically support what winds up in the school budget. So if everybody's going to do kumbaya around that, you wind up not knowing what you really need. And so I can't make a budget. I can't add things in that haven't been asked for by the school system. And I frankly wouldn't know what to add in if they don't ask for it. So I want to know, and this is why I'm very happy that at least they're going to give us however huge this list is of repairs, because the repairs are real. And there are air conditioning systems that don't work, apparently in a large number of our schools. But why am I finding out that air conditioning systems don't work in a meeting I had last week in a large number of schools? They didn't fail last year. They've been failing for a while. It is hard. You don't only have to get the support of elected officials, you've got to have the public comfortable with the decisions we make, particularly when it comes to funding that involves taxes, and not giving people a sense of where you really are and then just going after it year after year for the next big chunk. It's just destabilizing to the public process. I like things up front.
First,
and I'm still supportive.
First of all, thank you again for their support for the Pride Center. But my question is, do you intend to try and lobby the state to change an infrastructure problem that's associated with affordable housing? I happened to be at a Gaithersburg City Council meeting where a developer came and said, oh, we can't sell the condos in our building because they're not affordable with the fees associated with the condo, because they want to build these buildings that are appealing to people who want all kinds of amenities in them, and so now they've got an $800 a month fee. But the state's law says that you can't have a different fee for different people in the same building. So council actually approved the developer giving them $2.5 million to get out of being able to have those units.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that, but first place, I wouldn't have given the developer anything, and I'll tell you why. The developers know what the requirements are. If you pay so much for the property, and then you turn around and come to the government and say, you know, I can't afford to do this, it's like you knew what the costs were. Why'd you pay that much for the property? It's another way of basically making other people pay for a problem that they created. And it has been a problem consistently where they expect us to bail them out. And it's like, oh my God, I can't afford to pay for this. It's like, why'd you pay so much for the land? If what you pay for land does not support the rents you can get, given the requirements, you should pay less for the land. We play this as just a game. The developers get what they want, the landowners get what they want, and the residents get screwed. Not a good mix.
Thank you, Mr. Aldrich. We really appreciate your time. You've been very generous with it.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming and for asking your good questions. I'm sorry we have to close because they need us out of here. So
thank you.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for coming today.